The cool desert sand is refreshing on the soles of Dawn's bare feet as she travels towards the scent of fresh blood. The midnight sky is alive with millions of stars and planetary bodies, many more than any human could ever hope to see. Among them shines Wormwood, the red star that warns of the end times. This star has shone for millennia. The eldest have watched its movements since the time of the second city. Tonight, it seems so much brighter. As the scent of humans gets stronger, and with it the scent of the children of Cain, many of which of Dawn's own brood, there's a sense that she's not alone. They approach from the southeast, the crane, the tiger, and the dragon. They're strong, but Dawn is stronger. As they battle, the aggressors call upon the storms, and a mighty hurricane rages as Saya climbs into the sky. They call upon the storms as protection for themselves, but Dawn truly has the advantage here, as the painful rays of Saya are blotted out from the sky, allowing her to fight through the day and the night, calling upon her children to aid in the battle. The battle rages on as Saya and Chandra journey across the sky several times, and more of Dawn's children come to her aid, nourishing her as she battles the demons of the land of the red sun. As quickly as it began, it ends, as the bright rays of Saya burst through the cloud cover to consume her flesh. The crane, the tiger, and the dragon erupt in brilliant light, delivering them back to hell, and scores of Dawn's children turn to ash within her arms, as Dawn herself crumbles as the hurricane rages around her, and the bright disk in the sky gnaws at her bones. She calls out to her remaining children, her dying words, "Consume, my children, consume. May the strongest survive to host my soul, and may the weak sacrifice themselves to nourish the strong. Consume." Dawn awakens the next night, safe in her bed within the walls of the Pittock mansion. She knows she dreamt, but can't recall of what. Her skin is sensitive, and feels as if it's been sunburned. She reflects to herself that since the night with Hesha and his experiment with the vial of Vitae from Bangladesh, she's not slept in the same place within a week, constantly moving from one haven to the next, driven on instinct to keep moving and searching for what she does not know. Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to my world of darkness, where today is episode 10 of the Thicker Than Water recap, where we will be continuing our story of Project Ragnarok. I am so glad to be on a regular timescale because so much has happened, and where this session seemed to be turning off to be rather slow and uneventful, it ended up having a very devastating ending. I can say that, given by the fact that I'm sure you've read the title of this. Things happened tonight, which were unexpected, and some may say traumatic. And but we move on. We continue going forward. Tonight's story started off with Dawn awakening from a dream that was just a fog in her mind, not fully comprehending what had happened and not really understanding why she was so sensitive to the touch and why the mere breeze around her was like a minor pain. She awoke to find out that Sam himself had also stayed behind at the mansion when the others left. He was quickly trying to remove as many of the hard drives from the servers that he had stolen from the CERT base. While there, she decided that it was time to have a little bit of a conversation with Sam, trying to figure out exactly what they were going to do. And fighting back against the Camarilla and Billy Smith seemed to be the only option that anybody could truly agree on. Running did not really seem like an option. But Sam, of course, still wants to find a way to get to safety before they can possibly regroup for battle. This war that they're involved in just is not something that anyone was truly ready to face on their own. Now, on the other side of town in Fulton, the Anarchs claimed refuge inside a burnt-out motel. The majority of them doing their jobs, patrolling the area, gathering weapons reserves, various things like that. Some of the Anarchs had actually gone out on scouting missions to find out if the Camarilla had started to infiltrate back into Fulton now that Redclave no longer held dominant sway in the area, and that the Anarchs seemed to be at least subdued, possibly still captured in the Pittock Mansion, as far as the Cam should know. As the night drags on, with minor conversations here and there, it is decided that by Sam and Dawn that the collection of the 15 bodies that were left at the foot of the mountain by the hands of, assumingly, the werewolf, may actually come in handy when it comes to this. They want to gather up these bodies and use them to press the Camarilla's hold on the city better, to make them forced to spend their resources and their influences to try to cover up a big mess. Now, the idea of getting the bodies onto the roof of the Benson Hotel seems to be the most amusing, at least, which Sam and Dawn have cooked up the idea of gathering the bodies and getting them there somehow around the exact same time that the Romanian Legacy Foundation would be setting up for an event there, which would cause Anton to be frightened, and him being one of the more influential Kindred in the city would not be able to help out as much if he's thrown off his game. The idea of Deacon Royce's church congregation also meeting at the Benson Hotel until the church itself can be cleared of faulty gas lines, since that seems to be the big concern right now, is due to the explosion at the CERT base at the Olympic Park, that the older buildings in the city may very well be at risk of explosion, and a conflagration at a church is not exactly what anybody wants. So the idea of concentrating all of these things happening on the Benson Hotel itself, which seems to be the main area of concentration for the Kindred influence in the city. Now, Tinia has also called in a few street favors to make sure that deliveries to the Benson don't exactly go as planned. The trucks get stolen, things like that. So we're already looking at a lot of mundane issues happening on top of possibly one of the largest attacks of the Three-Face Killer so far. 15 bodies showing up at the Benson Hotel, most likely just unceremoniously dumped on the roof. So the idea would be for possibly Deacon to take these bodies through Shadow Step and dump them where he can. Unfortunately, and Sam and Dawn don't know this yet, but when all of the Kindred came out into the motel through the Shadow Step, Deacon didn't join them. No one knows exactly what happened with Deacon, but he just seems to have become lost in the abyss. But unfortunately, there's no time to think about that, because while Dawn and Sam are trying to figure out exactly how to transport bodies from point A to point B, and right now the idea of just let's put them in a wheelbarrow and try to push them along, and possibly Dawn's recent ability to cloak her entire coterie as they travel, seems to be the first thing that they can think about. Dawn, however, is feeling extra paranoid tonight, and possibly it's because now that there's police helicopters circling the area with searchlights. Things are not going as they wish them to go. Now, as they are transferring the bodies, which are being held in a freezer, to where they can work with them, Sam decides to give Damein a call. Unfortunately, Damien's having a little bit of an issue working his cell phone tonight due to his La Sombra Bane, and he passes it upon over to Tinia, who answers the phone, and they try to pass on the thought of, is the portal still open on their end? As they walked through the mirror from the Piddick to the blown out motel, they walked into the main office, the main lobby area of the motel, where one wall was all mirrors, and that's where they came out. Unfortunately, when Tinia was asking if it was still possible to get back to the Piddick, Damein did not 100% understand the question. He didn't realize that they were talking about, is the portal still open that they had already crossed through? Could they collectively come back directly to the Piddick? Unfortunately, Damein looks out the window and decides that now is the time to try one of his new tricks. And his new trick would be to shadow step. He sees that the shadows outside the motel stretch on quite a distance past his standard view, and being able to use shadow perspective, he is able to realize that they can nearly get all the way to the Piddick mansion. They can cross miles through a single shadow step. And without word, he grabs Tinia and steps into the abyss. This is a shaking, terrifying moment for Tinia, and what feels like hours of travel passes in a blink of an eye as they come out at the foothills of the mountain that the Piddick mansion sits on, out through a shadow of a light pole, as Tinia falls to the ground, instinctively gasping for air, even though she hasn't breathed in well over a decade. The searchlights of one of those helicopters shines directly on the pair, blotting out all shadow in the area and making it nearly impossible for Damein to be able to summon the shadows back. Within moments, there's 2 squad cars yelling for Damein to get down on the ground, if he has any weapons, to kick them to the side. Tinia gets up and bolts into the woods, assuming to be free. A couple of cops go after her and try to catch her, but primarily Damein is in the most trouble here. He's down on the ground, his hands behind his back. Police officer comes over and cuffs him. They pick him up and they move him to a strangely bright back of a police car. As Damein travels down the street in the back of the squad car, he does hear the cops talking. Why do we have to have these lights on like this? What is with this? And the police officer who's driving just says, we're following orders. That's all that matters. We got the bastard. While Damein travels, Tinia runs through the woods, deciding that soaring leap is the best way to go about this. And she's able to soaring leap away from the police officers, completely losing them. Eventually, they end up turning back and rejoining the convoy, moving the actual 3-faced killer to his new destination. Tinia doesn't get out of this unharmed. She gets some scrapes, but also is unable to control her jumping as well as she would hope, and ends up slamming directly into one of the trees. As she's trying to recover, she realizes that the branches are moving in her direction, blocking her exit. She then realizes that there are vines that are slowly starting to creep up and wrap around her. She's bound, terrified, as the heavy breathing and large form of a werewolf comes into view. She sees it. One ear slightly flopped forward, one dead eye, and it stares at her. She pleads with the beast. She's just trying to escape. She's trying to get out of his territory. Tinia rolled well on her persuasion check, and the plants release her. The branches move aside, and the wolf shifts down into a less terrifying creature and runs off into the woods. Maybe it still has a sense that it owes them something for saving his life, but Tinia escapes. Eventually, she gets up to the Piddick mansion, and she explains the situation hysterically to her coterie mates. Maquette runs into the room and screams at them there's something on the television that they should see. The news has caught up. The three-faced killer has been captured, and he's en route to wherever Cert plans on taking him. Turning on the TV, they see several police cars rushing down the road, a news van, one of the large armored Cert operative cars, and a familiar Rolls Royce. They see Rhino's car following at a safe distance behind on the news. Realizing that Damein had one of the cell phones that Sam himself had put together, the idea of there's a lot of information on those phones that he doesn't want Cert to have pops into his mind. Getting onto his laptop and activating the security measures that he has placed on these phones, he activates the lithium battery and destroys it. Now, all of this happens as Damein sits in the back of the squad car, realizing that he needs to find a way to escape, that not only is this bad for him, that this is bad for the Masquerade in general, this is bad for Kindred society in general. Out the window, Damein sees several police cars. He sees the Cert van, and he can even see that they're being followed by some Rolls Royce. He sees the news gather, that there's now a news helicopter, along with the police helicopter, that it's still shining that bright spotlight down on the car. The interior of the car is incredibly bright, and he's not able to actually summon any shadows in here. He can't escape. Without notice, Damein's able to pass his dexterity check to move the handcuffs from behind his back to in front of him, forcing them under himself and around his legs. He then dislocates his thumbs, which, I'm mean. I end up doing a willpower check to see if he's able to do it. If he had had fortitude or anything, I would have just probably let him go with it. But he passed the check. He dislocated his thumbs, and he gets his cuffs off. Puts them on the seat next to himself underneath his legs so they don't slide around and make noise. And he sits there, trying to figure out exactly what he's going to do. And as he's sitting there, going through the very few options he has in his mind, that's when things with Sam catch up. Activating the security measures on the phone, Sam causes the lithium battery cell within it to explode. The battery's in the trunk of the car. It explodes, causes a small fire. The car swerves as they hear a gunshot, presumably, go off in the back, automatically thinking that Damein has accomplices that are helping. Perhaps the girl who escaped in the woods. The heat from the battery exploding set off some of the ammo, and it went through the back of the chair and shot Damein in the back, frightening the officers enough for them to lose control of the vehicle as it flips several times and then comes to rest on its tires again. Both officers dead from the accident. Damein shakes off the disorientation of being shaken around so much and can smell the blood on the other end of the glass. He loses control and frenzies in the back of the seat. The Cert operatives pull over, doing what they can to keep the reporters at bay. They order the regular police officers to keep all the paparazzi back. The Camarilla, who's following the envoy, stay off in a distance, not to be noticed. The Cert operatives try to figure out exactly how to handle the situation. They now have a frenzying vampire in the back of the car. Frenzying and also now in the dark, as the lighting system from the back seat has been completely demolished. One of the Cert operatives pulls out a very large gun. Kind of looks like a shotgun. And they go to shoot Damein through the glass. Unfortunately, they miss with the stake that they launched into the back of the car, which just put a hole in the glass. Damein, distracted by the blood, however, is beating on the partition glass this entire time, trying to get to the spilt blood. His potence not being enough, he does crack it slightly, and as soon as he does, his shadows come to life, springing to action, getting in between the crack in the glass and shattering it as he gets into the front seat and gorges himself on the fallen officers. Seeing what's going on, however, the Cert team decides that this This can be handled right here and now. And they start pouring accelerant on the police car. They're going to say, obviously, that after the accident, the police car exploded. One of the operatives lights a road flare and drops it on the car as it goes up in flames. At this point in time, the news helicopter is able to catch up to the scene, watching everything that's going on with the burning car, with the three-faced killer inside. This is the end of that saga. The story that started in Sticks and Bones, with the murders caused by the Risen of Constancia, which continued through Project Ragnarok, blaming Damein for the attacks. Damein is now in a burning police car, in frenzy, as he gorges. But at this point, he passes his willpower check and looks around and realizes how much of a dangerous situation he's in. He's in a small car, surrounded by people who know what he is, who are going to kill him, covered in the blood of police officers. That's when he realizes that the lights are out in the car. And just as the car is completely engulfed, our coterie on the Pinnock Mansion is in complete panic. Sam realizes that although Damien's not fully a member of the coterie, they have been through a lot together, and this was completely his fault. Sam blew up the car. Sam caused this. It's his fault. And he can feel the stains coating his soul. Dawn, staring at the TV, induces a premonition of her own as she sees Damein in the police car, the fire, and then him dissolve into nothing. She can't quite grasp the fact that Damein is gone. So as much as they didn't get along, he was her non-lethal opposition. Damein and Dawn had bonded over the things that they do together, the problems that they caused one another. This was a relationship brought on the way vampirism creates relationships. Even if the person is an adversary to you in some fashion, you don't want to see them gone, because then what are you going to fill your nights with? Dawn's learning a lot lately on what it means to truly be immortal. And then there's Tinia. Her Brujah self can't handle the idea of the loss of a coterie mate. She has accepted that Damein is part of this coterie. Possibly some of this could be her fault. She abandoned him and she frenzies. But thus, just as she loses herself to the beast, she hears the echoing voice in her head of Maquette telling her to look at him, to stare into his eyes. He yells at her, down into her very soul. His voice quelling her beast, telling her that now is not the time. Being within the house of a Tzimisce elder, there is time to mourn, but this is not the right way to do it. Not here, not now. And it brings her out of frenzy, feeling her beast dissipate for the first time, not even having a whisper of it in her ear. And then Damein falls to the ground out of a shadow behind one of the curtains. Ghost white and very much worse for wear. Damein survived. And it's decided that Maquette and Sam are going to do a little bit of reconstructive surgery. Damein is gone, and someone new will have to take his place. Sorry if the title misled you, but this really was the end of Damein. Now, he's still alive, but he's going to have to be a completely different person if he's going to survive. And I really can't wait to see what happens next. Very slow night at first. People just talking, going back and forth, doing things. I really didn't think there was going to be much to recap. But that one scene where we almost lost Damein, where Tinia frenzied in Ivan Vassel's domain. It really is a very interesting thing that, regardless of whether or not you like a person in a game, obviously, this might have real life parallels, but I'm not here to talk about that. Whether or not you like a character, that character could very well be one of the things that holds your game together. I think the death of Damein may have cracked the coterie. They already don't get along. And sometimes that traumatic moment is needed to bring a coterie together. But I really do see that the death of Damein may have actually been the thing that broke this coterie. Now, Deacon never showed back up. We still don't know what's going on with him. He's now missing. But I think with everything that's going on, they're now realizing that leadership may be needed to handle this whole situation. That they need to learn to get along and to cooperate. That this needs to become something that can work and not something that's just surviving. I left this night off, it's probably around 1 a.m. in game. So the next game night, we're going to continue the same night. I'm very much looking forward to the point where we can actually stop this story. Conclude it, I should say. I don't want to say stop because that sounds like we're just not going to play anymore. But I want to give my players some downtime. I want to give Sam the ability to rummage through all the information that's on those hard drives. I want to give Dawn the ability to try to sort through her mental state and check in with Brittany, and I want to give Tinia the ability to reconnect with her sire after he's been missing for a few nights with everything that was going on, and Damein a chance to settle into the new identity he's going to have. Not to mention Deacon. Got to figure out what the hell's going to happen with him. The idea of, has he succumbed to the beckoning? Has he been taken in fully by Shalene? There's so many different options that could be happening. Now, the reason why Deacon wasn't there in the game that night was because when Alverson, his player, couldn't make it that night. And I try to make it so that there's always an in-game reason. I don't want to play people's player characters. In fact, this week we're going to be going through the same thing, where Serendipity Weird is not going to be here for that game, so Dawn is not going to be able to show up. And I have to think of a reason for that. But on that, this is where we stand currently in Thicker Than Water with Project Ragnarok. It's not quite done. CERT is still out there. They may not have the base that they had before, and a good number of them may have been taken out, but this hunter organization is still working within the city. The Second Inquisition is still present. I'm very excited to see how this night is going to finish up, and exactly what effects are going to come about with Damein not being Damein anymore. We very well might, now that I think about it, move on to the next night, due to the fact that Damein has to go through extensive surgery and become a new person. I'm very excited also that Maquette gets to use vicissitude. He's one of these. I like Maquette, obviously, because he's loosely based off me, what I would do if I was Kindred. And him teaching Sam how to use vicissitude or flesh crafting in a different way to give someone a new face, a new body, all in all. Especially with the way that Sam is built around the concept of being able to create masks. This will be one of the first in-game moments that Sam gets to fully utilize his potential in that, because where they're going to be building a new structure for Damein to become whoever he chooses to become, Sam is going to have to utilize information that he has gathered to create a new identity completely, like new paperwork, new social security card, new birth certificate. He is going to be building a person from scratch. And I'm excited to be able to see how that works. So, I am Voivode Maquette. This is my world of darkness and how it's developing. And I hope you all enjoyed this story. It's a much shorter version than I'm sure you're used to. Thank you for joining me. Have a good evening.